Thank you very much for finding that video to the people at the back. It's a beautiful story, isn't it? And as Bullwinkle has said, this is just plain weird for Canada Day. No big cake in the park, not a single massed band of Highland pipes. It's a very different experience for us, as the last number of months have also been very different experiences for us. You do find yourself wondering, can this really be the height of summer for 2020? And just to say that, in 6 months, this year will be behind us almost. But I think our world is pretty stressed out right now, to be honest. I think people are exhausted. And so I wanted to just take a moment here as we celebrate Canada Day to recognize that for many countries, not British Columbia, but for many countries, it hasn't been a time of lull. It hasn't been a time of reconciliation with where we've been and planning for the future, because the numbers have continued to rise. Thinking of Latin America, India, Africa, and the United States of America, just so close to us. And to those countries, of course, our prayers and our support are offered. And we think about what we've been through as a country. And in many ways, we have been unified by this experience of coronavirus. The experience of the support to the family of the RCMP officer Stevenson killed in Truro, Nova Scotia, came from coast to coast to coast. The support to the armed forces after the tragic helicopter accident that Leanne referred to came from all over the country. People's prayers and support to the forces serving in nursing homes in Ontario and Quebec was not just from Ontario and Quebec. And our own Bonnie Henry, our own rock star physician, has not just been listened to by people of British Columbia, but has been listened to from coast to coast as we have sought out advice, and then we have done what we were asked to do. But it's not just a health crisis, and that's been so apparent here in Victoria, because it is a financial crisis as well. And it is the small businesses here in Victoria, as well as some multinationals that we hear of, but primarily local businesses that our hearts have gone out to in many different ways. People have tried to organize support for those little places. Many have lost their jobs. The unemployment figures are staggering here in British Columbia and across the country. And the impacts of a lost job can be heartbreaking. We multiply that globally because they are the most vulnerable, are often the people who work for a day's pay, 1 day at a time. And so to not be able to go to work means there is no money for the food that day. And the malnutrition and even the starvation rates for that family with the loss of 1 day's pay times another, times another. And so there are severe and long-lasting effects. And yet, at the same time, not to diminish it, we are heartened by those early images, you remember from Italy, of people singing across the squares to each other. And how many of us out on our porches knocking pans together, or on our patios or on our balconies at 7 o'clock to say thank you, frontline workers. Day after day, rain or not, we were out there to express a solidarity bigger than anything perhaps we had seen, because it was a global expression of thanks. It's been said that we're all in the same boat. I don't think we are. We're all in the same storm, though. Our boat here in British Columbia is very different to the ones in Latin America. Some communities are being ravaged, and that's getting clearer every day. So the question for us on Canada Day is, how can we build more boats? How can we get more people into the boats in the rising storm? To change the outcome by changing our own narratives of what we value and what we are willing to sacrifice for. I don't know if you're like me with a paper flag in your window, but I have one. It's getting a little pale now, but in the middle panel, instead of it being a maple leaf, it's a red heart. And I think that's a beautiful flag for us in Canada in 2020. What is it that makes us hold that heart that we are willing to sacrifice for? Because we have all seen that beloved sacrifice, that welcoming, that cup of water, not in reaching out, but by not reaching out. Paradoxically, we've shown our love by staying inside. By the 100,000 we have stayed in. And when we do go out, we stay 6 feet, 2 meters. I believe that's also 1 furlong apart. And we wear masks when we can't do that. And we're careful. And there is social distancing even in the restaurants that are opening here in British Columbia. In short, it's doing what Dr. Bonnie Henry asked of us to do. That's how we have shown our love. We have offered that cup of water in welcome by hearing her tell us to stay calm, to stay safe, and to be kind. And in doing that, we have shown ourselves to be capable of a love that has moved people to tears. That's what the empty streets meant. We were willing to sacrifice for others. Those who were not immune compromised stayed in to protect those who might be. That is the most beautiful social love we've seen. So I think we've been asking some hard questions as this pandemic explodes around us. And I am a Christian. I am not naive. I, however, am a creature of hope. I believe in the power of hope. Hope, even at this time, or especially at this time. Because hope is transformational, and it is hope that we need from the grace of God at this time. I have experienced the sustaining hope from that grace of God, and I know others of you have too. And so we turn to those memories of hope experienced to animate us and keep us going now. One word is being used in every circle of life right now, and it's pivot. You know, if you did a Google search of how many times the word pivot was used in 2020, it would astound you. Because we've been talking about pivoting as that kind of quick change that is a response. So that a brewery and a distillery suddenly making hand sanitizers have pivoted. The restaurants who always welcomed customers and now are figuring out new ways to deliver food have pivoted. And we as a church, how we miss having congregational gatherings, how we miss our congregation. But we have pivoted to new ways of being, using technology and even the old-fashioned telephone. So we had a prayer today from Dr. Lydia Smith, who chairs the worship desk at the National Church, in which she had this beautiful line. She said, "Together we dream about the country we hope to become." So this last week I've been asking some people, what does that mean to you? I'd like to share that with you now. I've often heard of a growing consciousness, a consciousness born in the natural environment of the shutdown, when the skies were clear because planes were grounded, when we could hear the sounds of birds and of nature because there weren't so many cars on the road, when we could smell the flowers because the fumes were not from fuels. The dream was given sense by that what might be possible to hold on to that wonderful sense of nature. Someone else talked to me about the work of Abram X. Kendi, an American professor, who writes about anti-racism. And he expressed the dream that all would have a way to address systemic racism. And this is a helpful series of articles and books that will help us take action by not labeling a person, but by actions, so that we can do anti-racist actions, one after another. But somebody else did remind me of the racism that had been part of the COVID-19 response, racism expressed right here in British Columbia. Tragically, and their wish and dream was that we could all unite against the pandemic, not against each other. Racist acts and violence are not restricted to any one city or even any one demographic group. We here at First Metropolitan United Church were genuinely pained to read that the Black Lives Matter sign in front of the Mill Bay United Church, just up the island from us, was defaced this week. We dream about the Vancouver Island that we hope to become. One spoke of the lingering spiritual effects of the pandemic and the time spent in our homes, sorting, organizing, getting enough sleep, making bread. They hoped we would stop as the barriers are lifted, and prayer was that on this Canada Day weekend, we would think about what is really important and wish we could hold on to the sense of the priorities we rediscovered during the lockdown. Others spoke of the reflections learned these past few months and the prayer that we might keep on reevaluating the pace of our life, challenging our early cultural associations with being super busy as being super good. And so that we would be focused into the future, not just on the pandemic, freeing up resources to make our world more safe for more people. It was encouraging for me to ask these questions and hear these dreams. The intentionality behind these words comes in the midst of world news that we all read and share. The work done in Kenya that was just shared on that Mission and Service Fund video to create a safe house for the LGBTQIA and Two-Spirit community inspires us with the courage of those people who receive death threats. 1 cup of water, Jesus said. 1 cup can make all the difference. Of course, that's not to be taken literally. We're asked to offer, what is it? As simple as 1 cup of water that we can offer today during the pandemic on Canada Day to another person who is thirsty for whatever that is. That beautiful image Jesus gives us propels us forward on dark days and causes us to rejoice on days that are marked by compassion and courage. When compassion and courage travel together, beautiful things can happen. In the paraphrase called The Message, Jesus said, "This is a large work I've called you into, but don't be overwhelmed by it. It's best to start small. Give a cool cup of water to someone who is thirsty, for instance. The smallest act of giving or receiving makes you a true apprentice. You won't lose out on a thing." To paraphrase Nelson Mandela, Canada, our beautiful, our fragile land, may your choices reflect your hopes and not your fears. Amen.